In Isaiah 43:18, God told the people of Israel, forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. But there was a very specific reason that God said that. And that's what I want to talk to you about in this Drive Time video. Let's get started. Welcome to Equipped. I'm Mario Escobedo. On this channel, I do a lot of Bible study videos, but I also do videos like this one where I provide reflection and insight on ministry. If that sounds like it'd be helpful to you, then definitely consider subscribing to this channel and tapping the notification bell so that you're always up to date on the latest teachings. You've probably taught or preached on Isaiah 43:18, probably around New Year's or something like that, because it talks about forgetting the former things and the things of the past. Verse 19 says, God is doing something new. Behold, I'm doing something new. Don't you perceive it? It's springing up. But I want to talk to you about why I think God delivered that message through the prophet Isaiah to the people of Israel. And it has everything to do with context. Where this verse appears in its context has everything to do with its meaning. If you back up a few verses, verses 16 and 17, it's very interesting how God describes himself in verses 16 and 17. Basically, God is describing the event of the Exodus. Look at what Isaiah 43:16 and 17 say. This is what the Lord says, He who made a way through the sea, a path through the mighty waters, who drew out the chariots and horses, the army and reinforcements together, and they lay there, never to rise again, extinguished, snuffed out like a wick. It's obvious what God is describing in verses 16 and 17. He's talking about the Exodus event when he parted the waters of the Red Sea and Israel crossed in dry land, but the army of Pharaoh was drowned. Now, this episode of the Exodus crossing is epically, monumentally important for the people of Israel because it demonstrates God's power, and it demonstrated that God was on their side as a people. For the rest of Israel's history, they would always celebrate this event because God showed up in a mighty and a miraculous way. So in these verses 16 and 17, what we're seeing is a description of what the people of Israel considered to be the height of the expression of God's power. Then we arrive at verse 18, where God says, forget the former things. Don't dwell on the past. But when he says that, he's not talking about just any former thing, and he's not talking about anything that happened in the past. He's talking specifically about what he just described in verses 16 and 17. He's talking about the Exodus event. What was God saying? He was saying, forget about the Exodus event. Don't dwell on that former thing. Don't dwell on that past anymore. Forget about the Exodus event. Now, why would God tell the people of Israel in Isaiah's time to forget about the Exodus event? Well, I think it's because the people in Isaiah's time had viewed the Exodus event as the height, the maximum expression of God's power. And I think their approach was something similar to this. You know, that was incredible. God parted the waters of the Red Sea. Wow. You know, I don't think he could ever do anything to top that. I think that's the maximum expression. That's like the height of his power. There's no way God could ever top that. That's like the best thing, the most miraculous, the most powerful thing that God has ever done and probably ever will do. And so what happens? Well, the Exodus event becomes a lid for God's power. The people of Israel in Isaiah's time couldn't conceive of God doing something more powerful or more miraculous than what he did at the Exodus event. For this reason, God had to tell them, forget the Exodus event. Don't dwell on it. I want to do something new that you can't understand at this moment, but it will surpass even my power that I displayed at the Exodus event. That puts this verse in a completely different context when you consider that God wanted the people of Israel to forget what was perhaps one of the most famous and impressive miracles of all time. He's telling them, forget that, because it's limiting your belief as to what I can do for you now. Now think about what that means for you in pastoral ministry. Maybe you've had some experiences with God in your church or in your personal ministry where you say, man, God showed up big. That time that he did, I don't know, you fill in the blank. That was huge. That was such an evident, such a palpable display of God's miracle when he did this so many years ago. It's wonderful to thank God and to reflect on what he's done in the past. But we run the danger of developing the mentality that the people of Israel in Isaiah's day did. That is, God could never top that. God could never do that again or do something better in our church or in my ministry than what he did that time. And so, rather than being a motivating factor, something that propels you forward, that miraculous event that God did in your past actually limits you because you don't think that God could ever surpass it. There may be some people in your congregation who are thinking the same way. You know, I was sick one time and God showed up miraculously and he healed me. I don't know that he could ever do that again because after all, that was cancer that he healed. Or maybe somebody would say, you know, we were going through some really tough financial times and God showed up big time. He supplied in such a miraculous way. But you know, I don't know if he can do that again because this time things are really tough. What happens? Well, what God did in the past becomes a lid, a limiting factor, in our minds at least, of what God can do now. God's response to us is the same response that it was to the people of Israel in Isaiah's time. Forget about that. Leave that in the past where it belongs. I want to do something new. And if you think that what I did in the past was mind-blowing, you haven't seen anything yet. I am going to do something new that you have not even seen yet. This verse encourages us to believe that God will continue to do big and miraculous things in our lives today. Yes, we should celebrate and thank God for what he's done in the past, but not to the point that it limits our belief in what he can do now and in our future. So if you ever find yourself dwelling on the past and remembering the former things, be careful. Don't let those former things limit your belief as to what God can do for you now, and that what he can do now is greater than what he did then. Now let me ask you a question. What things do you do to stir your faith to believe God for big and miraculous things? Let me and everybody else watching this video know in the comments below, because remember, some of the best ideas and insights come from you, the community of the equipped. That's it for now, and I pray that with regards to Isaiah 43:18, you feel just a little bit more equipped. God bless. I'll see you in the next one.